Hey everybody, this is Eric Clark's Travel Videos, and I'm here on the Sapphire cruise ship out in the Antarctica, and they're bringing on some people from an observatory station from Antarctica. They've lived there for like 5 months, and now they're coming on the ship. They give them pizza and feed them, and then they let them take hot showers, and now they're going to do a presentation and answer questions and those kind of things. So I'll present that and share it with you. Here we go.
United Kingdom, so please give them a nice round of applause, everybody. And also, I just want to say good morning to all our guests watching in the Explorers Lounge, Club Fusion, and the Stateroom TV. So everybody turn behind you and say, hi, good morning. Welcome to you. Please, if you don't mind to tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Aoife, and I'm from London.
My name is Dale, and I'm from Yorkshire.
And my name is Maggie, and I'm from Edinburgh, Scotland.
Of course, there's more members of the staff though. So right now, they're going to tell you a little bit more about what they do here in Antarctica. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to have my team. They're going to be walking around because there's going to be a time and opportunity to do a Q&A. So get ready, please. And meanwhile, thank you once again for being here. What a pleasure to have you. This is also our last visit to Antarctica of the season. So looking forward to next year. But please, everybody, give it up one more time.
Thank you so much for having us here today. Thank you for coming to our presentation. It's a real pleasure to be here. As I said before, my name is Aoife. I'm the museum manager at the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, but you may know us better as Port Lockroy, or the Penguin Post Office, which is what you can see just behind us here. So myself and the rest of the team, we're going to tell you a little bit about the history of Lockroy and what we do today as a modern day Antarctic base. So Port Lockroy is our most famous site, but that's not all we do. In fact, it's only a small part of what we do. As a charity, we look after 6 different sites on the Antarctic Peninsula, all historic sites, all brimming with stories and histories, all very unique from one another, and as you can see, really well spread out around the peninsula. It's a huge task to look after any museum, but as you can probably imagine, looking after any kind of historic site and museum in Antarctica comes with some very unique challenges. So it's a real privilege as a museum professional to be able to work in such an unusual environment and tackle some very unusual problems that our buildings here face. And we also look after this very famous shipwreck. So some of you may recognise the wreck of Ernest Shackleton's Endurance, which is currently about 3,000 metres below the ice of the Weddell Sea in Antarctica. Of course, an incredibly famous shipwreck, second only to perhaps the Titanic, and the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, in partnership with Historic England, is responsible for the conservation management plan of this shipwreck. So essentially, we protect it and look after it as a historic wreck. But of course, myself and the rest of the team, we live and work at Port Lockroy, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the base that we actually live at. So Port Lockroy was first discovered in 1904, and this was part of the French Charcot Antarctic expedition. So the aim of this expedition was to map out more of the Antarctic Peninsula, which at this time was mostly unexplored. So Charcot and his men sailed down the peninsula, and they discovered this area of Antarctica and Goudier Island, which Port Lockroy now sits upon. So Lockroy is actually named after the French politician Edouard Lacroix, who funded this expedition. So in typical British fashion, we have butchered Lacroix into Lockroy. Lacroix is the correct pronunciation if you would prefer to use that. But no base was established on the island at this time. It was just noted down on Charcot's charts, and they continued to explore the rest of the peninsula. The island was also used for whaling in the early 20th century, so a very dark time in humanity's history. Whaling ships were incredibly prevalent in the Antarctic because at this time, whaling in the Arctic had really decimated the population of Arctic whales. So whaling attention turned to the Antarctic instead. And this area was really, really rife. Today you can still see a lot of whales, thank goodness, but especially in the early 20th century. Port Lockroy is a very sheltered harbour, so it's the perfect place for whaling ships to shelter from the weather. And today there are still whale bones on the island, there are whaling chains, and there's even the remains of a whaling ship run aground, which today the penguins make their nests in. So it's quite a nice thing today from quite a dark time in our history. But again, no permanent base was actually established on the island at this time. It was just being used as a sheltered harbour. It wasn't until 1944 that the first base was actually established on Port Lockroy. And this base is the one that still stands on the site today and is now the historic site that people can visit and that we look after. So in 1944, of course, it was the height of the Second World War, and the British government formed something called Operation Tabarin. Now, Operation Tabarin was an operation to send these men that you can see in the photograph down here, down to Antarctica to set up the first permanent British base on the continent. Now, they had two aims. The first aim was to study the weather of Antarctica, which hadn't been done by a British team before, so it was really the birthplace of British Antarctic science. The second aim was to watch out for enemy ships. Now, no enemy ships ever actually appeared in Antarctica, so they just had to do a lot of weather science instead. Maybe they were a bit disappointed about that. But everything that they did in those early days on the base is the precursor to the modern weather science that we use today. So it's a really important historical site. And today, you know, we can just do what you guys probably do when you check the weather, which is just look at an app on our phones and see what it's going to be like for the rest of the day. Reasonably accurately, anyway. But all of that goes back to these guys. So they were doing a lot of experiments with the ionosphere, they were sending up weather balloons, they were recording hours of sunlight and darkness. And all of this data and all of this work on these incredibly clunky computers, all of that went into creating the weather technology that we have today and the weather predicting technology that we still use, not only just in Antarctica, but in fact all over the world by ordinary people every single day. And they also established a post office. So this is probably what we're best known for today, but that goes all the way back to 1944. So of course, in those dark days before the internet, the only way to have any long-form correspondence with home was to send a letter. So they set up a post office on the base so they'd be able to communicate with home, and home would be able to communicate with them. They also brought some friends along. This is Gertrude the pig that you can see in the photograph here. Really valued member of the Operation Tabarin team who travelled down with the men in 1944. I do have to tell you, Gertrude did not survive the season. They did eat Gertrude, yes. We don't do that anymore, I promise. One of the men was actually so devastated by the demise of Gertrude the pig that he kept a photograph of her on his mantelpiece alongside photographs of his grandchildren for the rest of his life. So relationships you make in Antarctica are really something special. But the base closed in 1962, so by this time bigger and better bases were being built further down on the continent for the British Antarctic Survey. So Port Lockroy became obsolete, it could only support a small number of people, and they just needed bigger stations by the 1960s. So the station was abandoned pretty much overnight, and it lay in disrepair until 1996, which was when the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust took over the site as a historic site and restored it to its former glory. So today it can be visited as a historic site, and we still have all of the weather instruments, all of the food, all of the clothing that the men left behind when they abandoned the base in 1962. And this is what we look like today. So the big building that you can see on the right hand side, that is Bransfield House, and that is the original base from 1944. The building you can see in the foreground, that is the boat shed. We do not actually have a boat, so the name is kind of useless, but we just store food in it now. So it is still very much important to life on the base, but again, that is original to the first base that was constructed in the 40s and 50s. And you can just about see the roof of a building on the left there, just a curved roof underneath the mountains. And that is the Nissen Hut, and that is where myself and the rest of the team live today. So it's a different building from the museum. We live separately to the structure of the original base. And speaking of the team, this is ours. So every single year, the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust recruits a team of about 5 or 6 people who are crazy enough to come down to Antarctica for 4 or 5 months and to run the world's southernmost post office and to preserve the site as a historic site. So it's a pretty crazy recruitment process. It's a very long recruitment process, and you have to be ready to live in a very, very enclosed space. We all share a bunk room. We have no running water whatsoever, so you really have to be prepared to rough it for a couple of months. And most of our food comes out of cans, so if any of that sounds appealing to any of you, they will soon be running applications for the next year. But it's usually a new team that comes down every single year, because as a charity, you know, what the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust is really passionate about is that probably a lot of people think that you have to be a scientist to work in Antarctica. And of course, there's a huge number of scientists working on the continent doing amazing and very important work. But Port Lockroy, the whole idea behind it today is that it's open to anyone. You don't need scientific background, you do not need Antarctic background. You just need to be crazy enough to come here with a bunch of strangers and not kill each other. Surprisingly, there's a high number of people who want to do that every single year. And now I'm going to hand over to one of them. So this is Maggie, our wildlife monitor, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the penguin studies that we do here.
Hi everyone, so my name is Maggie and I'm very, very lucky to be the wildlife monitor for this season at Port Lockroy. So what we do as part of our work here, a lot of our work is conservation, which my colleague and friend Dale is going to talk to you about later. But as well as the conservation and the heritage side of the site, we also do some wildlife monitoring, and a big part of that is studying the population of gentoo penguins, who we call neighbours at Port Lockroy. So we see a lot of wildlife at Port Lockroy. We're very, very lucky to see a lot of seals around our base. We have a resident leopard seal we've had since Christmas. It's sort of been hanging around, so that's been really, really cool to see. And we've also got sheathbills who are always on the hunt. They're scavengers, so they're often on the hunt for penguin eggs and any kind of food source they can find on the island. And we've been very, very lucky to see a lot of humpback whales in the bay. But mostly, a large part of the wildlife we see is penguins. Do we have any penguin fans in the audience today? I suppose that's not surprising given where we are today. So we're very lucky to have over 1,000 gentoo penguins living with us on site. So while it's mostly gentoo penguins we do occasionally have visitors from other penguin types, most notably chinstrap Steve, who you can see on the right. So this is a regular chinstrap penguin who we see visiting the base. Now I'm sure there's probably more than one chinstrap penguin that visits, but we have decided it's one chinstrap penguin, his name's Steve, and he has become a bit of an icon on the site. So yeah, we're very, very lucky to see him on a regular basis. So I'm going to talk to you today about a bit of the sort of monitoring we do of the gentoo penguin population. So as I said, we've got about 1,000 gentoo penguin neighbours, which is over 500 breeding pairs, and part of the work we do is monitoring the breeding success every single year. So as Aoife was telling you, the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust have a team that go out every single year, and that's been the case since 1996. So part of the work that the seasonal team do is looking at how successful the breeding cycle is of the gentoo penguins. So it's part of a long-term study of gentoo penguins. So it's been going on for nearly 30 years. And what we do is we collect all this data, analyse it, and we pass it on to BAST, which is British Antarctic Survey, and they manage sort of the wider science programme for the UK and Antarctica. So all this data on the penguins just feeds into their sort of wider strategy and wider knowledge of penguins on the continent. So it's a really, really nice study to be part of, and it's something we really enjoy. So you can see the map on the left is the different colonies of penguins on the island. So they live in little colonies together, and what we do is we go out several times. So at the start of the season, they were all building nests, which they do making out of pebbles. So it's a very, very nice process where the male will gather pebbles and they'll make nests out of the pebbles, and this is where they incubate the eggs. So at the start of the season we had a lot of nest building going on, and we sort of had a look at this, and we then went out and counted every single egg on the island. So we had 938 eggs, So this was really, really good to see. And now we're at the stage where these eggs are hatching. We had our first egg hatching on the 28th of December, and now the island is full of chicks, which is incredible. So we've got 702 chicks on the island. So yeah, it's been really, really nice to see the whole cycle, right from the pebbles, making the nest, right through to chicks hatching, and soon they're going to start crashing. So at the moment they're still kind of by their parents in the nests, but they will be crashing with other young penguins so that both of their parents can go out to sea. So yeah, we're very, very lucky to be part of this study, and it's been a really, really nice process to be part of. So that's a big part of our work. So I'm sure, like a lot of people here, you would love to take a penguin home from Antarctica. I know that I would really, really like that. One of the things I'm going to really, really miss about living here is just seeing penguins out the kitchen window, out the bedroom window. That has become so normal now. And yeah, I'm going to really, really miss having our penguin neighbours about the island. But we've got a great way for you to take a penguin home with you. So our Adopt a Penguin kit. So Dale is going to talk to you about our online shop, Wiencke at the end. And as part of this shop, you have the opportunity to adopt a penguin. So it's a 12-month adoption pack. You'll get a little pack, you'll get a Gen 2 cuddly toy, you'll get a certificate to say you've adopted a penguin, and you'll get a Gen 2 penguin postcard. And if you go online and register this, we'll also send you a postcard from Antarctica the following year. It's a really, really nice gift. Some people like to take it for themselves, take a penguin home from Antarctica, and it's also just a really fantastic way to support the charity. As a charity, we don't get any government funding, so yeah, this is a really, really nice way to support the charity. And yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to Dale now, who's going to talk to you about conservation.
Hello, hi, so my name's Dale. I head up retail and fundraising here for the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what we do. So not only do we look after the buildings that are scattered along the peninsula, and also our population of 1,000 Gen 2 penguins, which, as Maggie says, we've just got over 700 chicks running around the island at the moment, which is incredibly adorable. We are really lucky to be here, as are all of you getting to visit this amazing continent. Not everyone is as lucky as us, and so one of the things that we're doing as a charity is we're digitally mapping and scanning all of our buildings, which means that people all around the world will be able to have access to these wonderful sites. They'll be able to digitally explore them through VR headsets and online, and we're hoping to be able to push this out to schools and young people as well. If you've got grandkids or children, you might know that Antarctica does often come up. I've got 5 nieces and nephews, and so they're very excited to be studying at school and showing off that their auntie's actually down here. So yeah, this is a big part of what we're doing with our outreach and education. And we also, to continue on that, have loads of content that you can all enjoy yourselves if you're interested in learning lots more about Antarctica. So we have our Insight Live sessions. These are available on YouTube. We have, as the only UK charity working down here in Antarctica, it means that we've got really great relationships across the industry. So we have lots of people in tourism, but also wildlife experts, scientists, historians, and so they often will come along to meet with members of our team and do interviews, lectures and talks, and we have those online. So as Aoife said, we look after the Endurance shipwreck. Some of you may have seen last October there was a documentary that came out. It's on Disney Plus and National Geographic about the discovery of the Endurance shipwreck in 2022. So Camilla, who is our CEO of the charity, had the opportunity to interview the director of that film, and that's available online. Also, if you're interested in dogs, which I am, we have a really great talk about the history of dogs on the continent. So dogs were working alongside humans on the continent up until the early 90s, when it was decided that actually it probably wasn't best for them to be here because of the waste that they produce, and also the fact that they were starting to become predators to the natural wildlife here. But they were such a key part and hard workers of the teams that came down on expeditions throughout history. We also have our Voyage to Antarctica podcast. So again, loads of really cool interviews with experts around Antarctica that you can listen to if you're the kind of person like me who likes to listen to them on your walks. Anywhere that you get your podcasts, you can find our content there. We have a really great monthly newsletter where we send out information and links to all of these kind of talks. And if anything exciting happens in Antarctica, we also share news on that. So there will be a QR code coming up shortly that you can scan, and you'll be able to sign up to that newsletter if you so choose. But yes, also conservation is a really huge part of what we do. So as Aoife says, one of the challenges and exciting things about her work here as a museum professional is looking after these really unique buildings in a really unique environment. If you imagine that these are really no more than timber sheds, imagine your garden shed down here in this really harsh environment. So it's very wet and it's cold, but also with increasingly warming temperatures as well. It really puts stress onto these buildings. And so to make sure that we look after them, we hire specialist conservation carpenters. So some of you may have met Jim, who's with us backstage, and you'll get to meet again shortly. Jim is our specialist conservation carpenter this season. He's coming down here bringing all of his knowledge to help us restore and look after these buildings. One thing he's passionate about that we've all been learning about too is linseed paint. A lot of the paints that were used historically on these buildings contain plastics, and you can see that when they flake over time, those flakes were going out into the environment, and that was obviously something that we weren't happy about as a charity. So we spent a lot of time making sure that we're replacing those kind of old technologies. So the reason that we hire specialist conservation heritage carpenters is because we want to be able to look after and restore these buildings in a really sensitive way to the way that they were made, but with that forethought and modern technologies, considering the environment and the impact that these buildings have being down here. So this is Damoy, which is just across the way from us here in Port Lockroy. It's probably our second most famous site. This was been painted this kind of blue colour that you can see flaking in the middle here. And this was through the work of our conservation carpenters. We actually realised was originally orange, so we've replaced that orange, as you can see, so it's a really bright colour there. These huts were often refuges or waiting rooms before travelling back off the continent, and so having these bright colours meant that anyone who's on an expedition could spot them and make sure that they could get themselves into safety if necessary, or just find their way home. Up here you can see this little row of tents just near Damoy, so people think we have it rough living on the island with no running water, sharing a bunk room, but our carpenters often spend a lot of time working really long working hours and then sleeping in tents, which apparently they've told me they enjoy, but each to their own. So this year we're starting work on a new project. So this is Blake Lock. So Blake Lock is a 1950s sledging lodge. So again, talking about those dogs working down here on Antarctica. When the men on their expeditions needed respite and rest, these are the kind of places that they would stay. You can imagine that it was probably quite a cramped experience and very warm, so not particularly very uncomfortable. As you can see up here, top left, this is the sort of sense of scale of these buildings. But again, as Aoife said, so many of the men and the expeditions and the uses for these buildings were kind of abandoned unexpectedly. You never really knew exactly when you were going to have to leave. And so it means that they're really brimming full of artefacts and are often left just as they were when they were in use. And so Blake Lock is no exception. It's absolutely incredible. If you check out our our social media, we've just posted some videos of what it's like inside, and it's just crazy to see all of their food and their clothes and books and things that they were using. And it's quite interesting for us as well, living in the Nissan hut, that we have a very similar lifestyle to the way that they lived. So you can see our little hard-working dogs up here, and at the bottom you can see our hard-working carpenters. So this was the team last year, alongside the New Zealand Heritage Trust, looking at planning out our conservation management plan for the building. And so this year the work will be starting, and it's funny because normally at this point in the presentation I'll say in a few weeks our carpenter will be here, but I'm so happy that he's literally sitting backstage, and I'm very excited to hopefully help with a little bit of it if he'll let me. So how can you help? We are a charity, as Aoife says, and as Maggie says, we receive no government funding for all of this work that we do in terms of our outreach, our digital mapping, all of our content production and looking after these buildings. And so it's often through the generosity of explorers like yourselves that we're able to continue doing this really important work to preserve the heritage of British Antarctica. So as Maggie says, you can adopt a penguin. We have 1,000 penguins on the island, and we've currently adopted 900 of them. So there's 100 lonely little penguins that would love for you to take them home this season. So if you'd like to do that, you'll be available on our online shop that we've made just for you guys. So here you go, I'll just leave this up for a moment if any of you'd like to scan it. So this is our QR code for our newsletter. This is a really great way of supporting us, which is just simply keeping on top of what we're doing, sending it to friends and family, learning more about this amazing place, the animals that live here, and the work that we do with our heritage and history. So very happy for you to sign up there. I can bring that back up again in a bit. So for you guys, we've built an exclusive online shop. So as I say, I head up retail here at the Antarctic Heritage Trust. As you can see, lots of people often like my t-shirt. When people visit us, they don't actually have the opportunity to buy this yet because it is only available online and in certain places, and one of those is for you guys. So if you like this t-shirt, it's available on our exclusive website for you. We have our exclusive Antarctic tartan, which Maggie loves as a Scot, and so do we. So we have this is made for us exclusively in Scotland, and it picks up on all the colours that you see across Antarctica. So we have that orange of the lichen, the yellow of an emperor penguin blush, those blues and whites of the skies and snows, and black granite that you see in those mountains. We have all sorts of things. We've got bow ties, ties, the poncho, the purses and the scarves and some placemats. So we've got really cute, lovely things. I will recommend the poncho. I have that, and it is delightful and very, very warm. And then t-shirts, yeah, so we have our Daffia Scott t-shirt at the end there. So this penguin design, Daffia is one of our vice patrons. She is the granddaughter of Captain Scott, and she still has a really close connection with Antarctica and the work that her grandfather did. But she's now actually a working artist, and as I say, our vice patron. So she designed this, she did this illustration for us exclusively, and we popped that on a really lovely t-shirt. That's one that is waiting for me when I get home. We also have our Penguin Post Office t-shirt as well, which is a really sweet design, and then our Port Lockroy exclusive t-shirt. So each year we bring out a new t-shirt, and that's our new one at the end there. If you'd like to just simply remember Antarctica, we have loads of Antarctic things. So I know that lots of people like to collect shot glasses, so we have those available. We also have patches for those of you who have your guides and brownie blankets. The magnets, we also have a map. So the Graham Land South Shetland Islands map is probably the best one for you guys because it sort of tracks the most of the area that you've visited on your cruise down here with Princess. And we also have our Antarctic hoodie as well, which I know a lot of the team here would like. And then we also have loads of stuff for kids. So a lot of people like to buy gifts for their grandkids when they were visiting down here. So we have, again, if you'd like to match. So me and my niece love wearing matching t-shirts. So we've got this one for her. So we have this in the children's size. We also have the jigsaws, and the adopted penguin's actually a really nice gift for kids as well. Helps to really engage them with the science and the wildlife here. If you do register your penguin, you get penguin updates. So who doesn't want a bit of penguin content? Speaking of penguins, as you can imagine, we have lots and lots of penguin delights. So we have our Christmas decoration that we sell to you guys at this time, even though we're not at Christmas yet, so you can get that ahead of next year, which is exactly what I did. And we also have some exclusive prints, other patches, and some tea towels as well, if you want anything particularly very British. Thank you very much. You can keep in touch with us on all of the usual social media, and then this is our shop. So I will leave this up on the screen for you, but we are really delighted to be here. Thank you very much. And we're really also very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we have the team. We have Vicky over there. If you have a question, please just raise your hand and we'll be happy to go there. Yes.
Yes, we have a question over here.
1 second, please. How do you get your food supplies?
First of all, I'm sorry, I did not welcome the rest of my team who have just joined us here. So this is Jim, our Falcon Summit broadcast master, and Lou, who's our base leader, who looks after us in features also. Sorry guys. You look giant on that asking you. So how do we get our food? Yes, the question was how do we get our food? So our food is, as Aoife says, we have a boathouse and no boat, and that's because we don't have a mechanic, and we also can't go out without a ship attached to us to keep us safe. And so our boathouse is used to store our emergency equipment and also food. So we have a lot of tinned food, dried food. Yes, the grimace is real. We have lots of things like that, but that really served us at the beginning of the season. But as we start to see ships like these, everyone is really kind and very generous. So we are often gifted with fresh food. So I never really realised how excited I would be about eggs, but they have become a big part of our world. So yeah, we are gifted lots of nice fresh food that we can survive on.
Thank you. Vicky?
Yes, how many people visit the museum every day?
Ooh, interesting question. Yeah, how many people visit the museum? So we have a cap on visitor numbers, and that is because of the size of the island. It's about the size of a football pitch, and only about half of that is actually accessible for people because of the number of penguins on the island. So we can only have 40 people on the island at any given time, so we can only see smaller ships. The cap on visitor numbers for an entire day is about 300 people, but again, that would have to rotate through in groups of 40. So it really depends who we're seeing in a day, it really depends which ships are in the area, and what we can accommodate to make sure that there's no interference with the wildlife on the island.
Thank you. Emily, please.
We have Dahlia here, and she would like to know how many months do you spend in Antarctica, and what is the lowest temperature that it gets?
So great question. So we spent 4 months in Antarctica. So we arrived on the 11th of November, and we will go home around the 8th of March. We'll be here 4 months in total. The weather has changed quite a lot since we arrived. So when we arrived, the island was 100% covered in snow. It was up to the windows of the buildings. So we had to literally dig our way into our buildings, dig our way into the museum. And now that snowfall's at about 10% of the island. So the snow has significantly dropped. In terms of temperature, it's not as cold as you would expect. I would say our temperature normally fluctuates around 0 or 1 degrees. Obviously it can get lower, but with wind chill, that's normally the biggest factor. So it's normally around, I'd say about 0 degrees, but with wind chill can often feel like -5. So yeah, that's probably the average temperature we have.
Thank you. Kiva?
Yes, so we've got Catherine here from Liverpool, wants to know what you do with your poo.
The great question of what we do with our poo. So we actually, like Aoife was saying earlier, we don't have any running water on the island. We have no plumbing. So what we do is we have a sort of camping toilet situation. So under the Antarctic Treaty, we have a special permit given the small number of people on our island to dispose of organic waste into the sea at high tide. So that's where organic waste is. And any sort of paper waste we bag up and we take onto ships. So yeah, that is what we do with our waste.
Thank you. Emily?
Colleen would like to know how the penguins respond to you.
So a good question, how do the penguins respond to us? So it's really, really interesting. So the base closed in about 1962, and the penguins moved in the 1980s, and we obviously took UCAT, the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, took the running of the site over in 1996. So penguins are very used to the sort of seasonal team being out there every summer, saying that we give them a lot of space. So they're not scared of us, they're not bothered by us, but we sort of live in harmony together, and we both give each other space. We always keep away from the wildlife, but they seem to sort of accept us as part of the story every summer. So no, they aren't fazed by us at all, I would say.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, please. What kind of training you have to go through before you come here?
Yeah, so we go through really extensive training. So as Evie says, like our backgrounds are not in Antarctica, they are not in science. We have quite unusual backgrounds, we're a bit of a mixed bag. And so training was really important to make sure that we knew what we were doing when we got here. It's even down to just being able to get the base up and running, get the museum open, but also to keep ourselves safe. So So we went through fire training with the London Fire Brigade. So that was really interesting because they kept saying, and don't worry, they kept saying, I want to stay, and then we'll arrive, but we won't. And so a lot of that is that we have to look after ourselves. So being really sensible around when we're using the cooker, for example, we do have a small gas stove. And then we did a lot of extensive medical training, so like remote survival training. So that was pretty hardcore, but we know that if we were to slip and hurt ourselves on the rocks, that we would actually all know what we do. We do medical drills to make sure we're on top of that and make sure it's all in our minds. And we also have a 24-hour phone line to medical experts and doctors, so we can ring them at any time. And then also, again, that generosity of the ship. So we have doctors on every ship, and if any of us are feeling under the weather, we're always invited to be able to go and see the doctors on board. So we have loads of different training, and for us as well, like there was lots of personality tests, psychological tests, team building, practicing living together for a bit before we came out here. So the charity takes that really seriously to make sure that we're all as prepared as we can be to do this kind of crazy thing.
Thank you. Vicky.
I think it was already answered, but the question was, do you have doctors, and what do you do if anyone gets sick?
Yeah, so as I say, we have a doctor on call, we have doctors on ships, and when any of us are feeling unwell, we are like a family now. We've been together for quite a long time. So I wasn't very well a couple of weeks ago, and it was actually really, everyone in the team was really lovely, let me have a little lie-in, were bringing me some medicine when I was in bed, felt like a child again, it was lovely. So we do all look after each other.
Emily.
Annie would like to know, who is the designated chef and what do you eat for breakfast, lunch and dinner?
Who is the designated chef? We take it in turns. So we have a colour wheel. Actually, Jim's is joining us, so we need to add him to the colour wheel, the chore wheel. So one person will cook, one person will clean, one person will wash up. What do we eat every day? It changes. Like Dale says, a lot of eggs, mostly. But yeah, we have a pretty good diet. So yeah, we take it in turns to cook, and we eat very well.
Right here, please. Are you here for one season? Are you going to be back next year? And have you been here before?
So this is all of our first season. Yeah, they throw the net wide open every year and bring in a new crew every season. We have one person who returns. So at the beginning we had Lisa, who showed us the ropes. And I think I might be coming back next year to do the same. So hopefully I'll be back.
Keep it.
Yes, so Lauren up here wants to know if you get electricity or cell phone service.
Yeah, so we do have electricity on the island. We had solar panels installed a couple of years ago, and they produce all the electricity we need. We then have gas canisters for cooking and heating. We don't get cell service, so we're not able to contact home in that way, but we do have Starlink, so we have an internet connection. We can speak to our family, and we have got satellite phones in case of emergencies as well.
Yes. Oh, how much interaction do you get with other teams in Antarctica?
So our nearest base is about 30 minutes away. It's a Chilean naval base. And so we've been in contact with them by radio and by email. We've had gifts from the nearby Ukrainian base, and we've sent them some presents back. So it's really, really nice to feel part of an Antarctic community down here. We see lots of ships during our time here. We get ships visiting most days. But in terms of other bases, we haven't been to any other bases. We've had a couple visit us. We actually had the Spanish Navy visit this morning just as we were leaving, so that was a bit of an exciting and unexpected visit for us. But it is really wonderful that even though we don't necessarily see each other, we do feel very looked after and very connected to the rest of the community down here.
Emily, please.
So Mike has two questions. The first one is, what do you use for heating? And also, he said you're very young, so is there an age limit of who can come and work in Antarctica?
I love when people say that we're very young. I'm actually going to be 40 next year, so I'm just like, I know guys, it's all natural. Yeah, so anybody can apply, and like George says, the charity finds it's really important to be able to give people the opportunity to be able to come down here and explore and work here without having a science background. So anybody can apply. Like Lisa's just retired as she headed back, so she was our team member who came to introduce us to the island this year. So you can really be of any age, any background, as long as you sort of feel fit and healthy enough to be able to do this, because some of the sort of physical work's quite hard. You know, we don't have running water, so we have to carry big jerry cans of water from the ship, so there's lots of that kind of physical work, but beyond that, yeah, there's no age limit to doing this crazy thing. What was the other question? Heating. Yeah, so as Lou says, we have gas canisters. We have a small sort of gas stove in our Nissan, so it can get really nice and like cozy, really. But often we go old school, and we use our hot water bottles, blankets, and because the space is quite small, just the sort of five of us being in there sort of generates enough heat for us to sort of keep warm while we chill out on an evening. So yeah, that's how we have our heating.
Cuba.
Yes, so Amalia here wants to know, what was your biggest motivation for taking this job and doing the work involved?
Well, I suppose everyone could maybe answer this one. So for me, it was just kind of, well, yeah, I'm like hurtling towards 40, wanting to sort of explore more of the world. I've done a lot of travelling. Coming down here was such a unique opportunity. I work in freelance. I work in film and TV awards, and also in the heritage sector and arts. So for me, this was just like a really great way to explore heritage and the kind of art side of Antarctica as well. That a lot of the expeditions brought resident artists down with them, and so it was really nice to come and actually see those landscapes that they were capturing. So for me, it was just kind of mostly as well, just like a why not? Like the opportunity presented itself. I threw my hat into the ring and really looking to be here. So yeah, that was mine. Just I free fall through life and I ended up here.
So I work in building conservation back home in England. I come from a school of thought through the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, which is set up by William Morris. That's kind of based in London. So that's the oldest building conservation organisation in the UK. So the environment we work in the buildings are very fragile, and a lot of what we do is discuss and philosophise on what we do with the buildings, and the challenge of coming down here. Being in Antarctica is obviously a big draw. The logistical challenges, my shopping list had to be done by July, and that's all been shipped down. So it's learning, it's being outdoors. Coming to Antarctica, I love the outdoors, and combining a lot of things I care about and enjoy, and just making the most of an amazing opportunity.
Similar to what Dale said, I think most of us would say, why not? We all we decided to go for it, and here we are. So be careful what you apply for, I suppose.
Vicky.
Yes, I have two questions. The first one is about living on the island. Did you ever have any scary moments on the island? And the other one is about shopping. If the sizes of the shirts run true to form, what are the sizes?
So on the online shop, there are size guides for everything. So they have all the international size guides. So wherever you're from, you'll be able to see the sizes that you recognise, and there's also measurements included as well. So you should be able to find exactly what you need. Scary? Have we had any scary moments? Oh, Lou looks like she's had a scary moment. No, not unfortunately. Thanks for that. Scary moments. I think probably the scariest moment for all of us was when we first arrived and dug our way into this little hut that was going to be our home for the next 4 months, and got the electricity working and the internet connection, and then watched the ship sail away from us. That was it really. Beyond that, we've actually been quite sensible and managed to muddle through without too much drama, I'd say. So yeah, just at first felt a bit overwhelming, but now we've really settled in, and there's a lot of procedures in place to keep us safe. And like I said before, the community down here would be so quick to respond if anything were to happen. I don't think any of us feel any need to be afraid, because we know we'd be caught.
Okay, right here, please.
so the question was, do we have any sort of health, sort of safety training around having gas and keeping warm and those kind of things? So yeah, we did lots and lots of health and safety training, all sorts of things from like working from a height so that we can sort of keep an eye on Jim when he's up ladders and things like that. And we had gas training. The London Fire Brigade often talked us through around gas as well, and then even from the health side of our sort of first aid training, a lot about keeping warm, because obviously hypothermia, things like that, put us at risk being quite cold here. But as Maggie says, like, the temperatures haven't actually, I mean, again, Maggie's from Scotland and I'm Northern, so we've obviously been in shorts and t-shirts, we've been fine, but like, it hasn't felt that cold, but we managed to keep ourselves warm, and that is a priority for us, to making sure we're eating as well, and making sure that we're drinking water as well, because dehydration can lead to hypothermia as well. So yeah, we had loads of extensive training. Yeah, we have carbon monoxide. Yeah, we do indeed. George likes keeping an eye on the carbon monoxide as well, from things like just sharing the bunk room. You know, we're breathing out all the time, and there's a lot of us in a small space, so keeping windows open, which again, you wouldn't think you'd open a window when you're living on an island in Antarctica, but we do as well, to make sure we're getting fresh air through the building.
Keep up.
Alright, I've got a few questions. We have a question: how do you get to the island when you first go out to start the season from London? Is it planes, boats, helicopters? We also want to know, is there any wages or salary involved? And are there other things you like to receive from a ship besides food? So clothes, towels, anything like that?
So as far as travel goes, yeah, it's a very extensive journey. We start in Cambridge, which is where the charity is based in the UK. We load up an incredible number of bags, and then we go to the airport. We flew out of London this year. So for us this year, the flight journey was London to Rome, Rome to Buenos Aires to Ushuaia. Then we had a few days in Ushuaia, you know, just to make sure we were all kind of settled in, new time zone, make sure nobody had forgotten anything. The airline actually lost quite a lot of our bags, so we were basically just scrambling for bags for a while. So it was good to have those days. And then we boarded a cruise ship. So, you know, this part of the world, obviously there's a lot of ships passing through, so we were very, very fortunate to be granted passage on one of those, and they sailed down with us. We had kind of 5 days sailing before we got here. And again, the crew were absolutely exceptional. They helped us dig into the base. They made sure that everything was set up and running. We were all feeling good. We were all feeling happy with how the base was at peak kind of operational capacity. And then, yeah, we had that scary moment when they sailed away again. We had to say goodbye to them. But yes, it's a very extensive journey, and we'll be doing it all exactly the same in reverse when we leave. What were the other two? Salary. There is a salary. It's not very high. So yeah, you do get paid. We're not volunteers. We do get a salary, but it's not really why people come here. You know, it's mostly to get the experience of working in Antarctica. And we are only here for 4 months, which seems like a long time when we're actually here, because, you know, with 24 hours of daylight, the days feel very long, and we're very, very busy. They're very long working days. But actually 4 months out of a whole lifetime is not particularly a long time, so it's really flying by. We've only got 5 weeks to go. Oh, anything else from the ships? We did get champagne on Christmas Day. That was quite exciting. No, I mean, food is the main thing that we're always, you know, really thrilled to get. It's such a tiny space. We didn't bring very many personal items. You know, we didn't really bring that many changes of clothes, because there's just nowhere to put it on the base. You know, you really, really have to whittle down your life into very few objects. So actually, you know, things that are not long lasting are kind of the best, because we can just get through them very quickly.
Emily.
Carol would like to know, what do you do to entertain yourself in your very limited downtime?
Me? What do we do? I sing, I dance. No, we're very keen. We do have internet there, but we're very keen not to use it too much. So yeah, we enjoy cozy nights in, talking, chatting, drawing, knitting. Happened yesterday. I made myself a hat out of cardboard. So we find ways to keep ourselves amused. You know, yeah, never a dull moment on the island.
Vicky.
Yes. What happens once volunteers come and ships don't come anymore to the base? Yes.
In the winter time, so is that the question? What happens in the winter when the ships stop coming?
Yes.
Yeah. So we come in on one of the first ships to arrive after all the sea ice is frozen, and we have to get out pretty quickly before the ice freezes up again. It's worth noting that Bransfield House, the museum part of the island, isn't actually locked over winter. So I'm the postmaster, and when we arrived on the island, the post box was already full. So even when we're not there, people are still coming to the island and posting their mail. I guess in essence it is a refuge. So refuges are never locked. There's no padlock on the door. So when we go, the door is open. Please pop in. I haven't brought any with me, I'm afraid. No, I often come carrying a couple, but not today. We'll have to talk to the guys here.
Kiva.
Yes, we have one question about the paint on the exterior. Apparently paint is not supposed to be used below 10 degrees Celsius. So do you use a special kind of paint?
So historically they used lead-based paints, which we can't use anymore, and they perform much better than modern paints. Over the years there's been oil-based and water-based paints, which people don't realise are a byproduct of the petrochemical industry. So they're actually plastic-based paints. These tend to delaminate and flake away, especially the water-based paints. So now this year we're going back to oil-based paints. But when I joined, I pushed to try and introduce linseed oil paints, which are kind of a modern take on lead-based paints, except we use zinc and graphite as a binder. So this year we're going to try our linseed oil paints on site. The problem being you need the timber to be down to about 12% moisture content for the paint to adhere properly, and linseed oil paint takes much longer than plastic-based paints to cure and set. So going on from that, the next thing we're looking at is, so the windows are the big problem, and what we're looking at doing this year is taking a window back to the UK to repair it and conserve it, let it dry, paint it, and then bring that back out. And we may find over the next few years we have 2 sets of windows that we rotate, because it's a losing battle. You just can't get them to perform how they need to. So it's a really good question. That is probably the biggest challenge that I have in the conservation, the buildings team have, is trying to get the paint on and make it stay and protect the building.
Thank you. We'll have a couple more questions, and then of course, please find people will have to disembark the vessel so we can continue on our journey. So Emily, please.
We have Kate over here. She would like to know how you do laundry, and also there is thousands of applicants every year. So what made you guys special to stand out to get the job?
Laundry comes on the ships, same as everything else. So we have to put everything in a giant duffel bag and bring it on board one of the ships. And if they have a couple of hours where they're in the bay, they're able to turn it around really quickly for us. So it's always a really exciting day when we've got clean clothes. It really makes you kind of think, living here, about kind of all of the privileges you take for granted when you're living back home, and you can just turn on a tap for water and you can just put things in the washing machine. I think we'll all kind of go back home and be more grateful for the things that we have kind of on demand in the UK.
So in terms of the recruitment process, as you say, a significant number of applicants every year. I think this year it was just under 1,000 for 5 roles. So it's quite an extensive process. You have an informal interview, a formal interview, and then we go to a selection event. In our case, that was 16 people, any of whom are suitable to work in Antarctica, and what they're looking for at that point is the combination that makes sense. And I think there's something really lovely about knowing that we've been chosen as a team. We've been chosen for something that's greater than the sum of our parts, and it's really sweet, and we have to remember that quite often, that we were chosen to work together. And I think I've been really proud of everyone to watch us grow and evolve into that while we've been here, into this very sweet, very dysfunctional little colony that we now are.
Yes, Stephen here wants to know, so around Port Lockroy, is there any natural predators for the penguins?
So yes, there is. So on land we have skuas, so they're the birds. So they will often be sort of hovering around on the rooftops of buildings. So they're on the lookout for young chicks or eggs. And at sea, it's normally leopard seals. So as I said, we have a resident leopard seal that's been hanging around since Christmas. So yeah, unfortunately there is a few natural predators, but everyone has to eat, so that's the way it is.
Okay, we're gonna continue with the last question, Vicky.
What do you look forward to the most once you set back home?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because I feel like we all have very different answers. I know Dale's looking forward to a bath. I myself, we live on quite a small island. It's about the size of a football pitch, and it's quite a rocky terrain, so it's hard to get any sort of movement in terms of like walking or running. So I am definitely looking forward to just being able to go out for a bit of a run when I get home.
What about you guys?
Yeah, definitely a run, 100%. Like, you know, you really don't think maybe about how much you move in a regular day, but all of you guys, you know, walking around the ship definitely do more steps in a day than we do on the island.